Hello and welcome everyone. Just for your info, this is my second take recording all of this because I didn't turn on my microphone the first time. So I hope the second time will work and I hope you can hear me loud and clearly. And yeah, wish me luck. Hello and welcome everyone. Today I'm sharing how I finally created my first chapter of my webcomic and the lessons I wish I had known earlier. So if you have ever dreamt of making your own webcomic but felt overwhelmed by the process, this might be the video for you. For some context, I've always loved storytelling and I still love it. I always try to include storytelling in my art, but also I, for example, tried writing a book in high school. I wrote a big chunk of it with a friend of mine. I, of course, also dabbled in fanfiction, and sometimes, not gonna lie, I still get kudos to some of my unfinished stories that I wrote 2 chapters for, and I feel so bad for the unfortunate soul that stumbled across my work, because I will never finish it. And I know, I'm like, oh my god, I'm really thankful for the kudos, but you know, I'm never gonna finish this. I'm so sorry. Maybe I should have put it down. God damn. I even started dreaming up multiple fantastical worlds for comics. Like I had like 3 different comics in my mind before the one I now sharing with you today. Sadly, none of them ever came fully into fruition. The multiple failed and now one successful project. It's 1 chapter, but for me that counts, okay? It's a success. Yeah, with the multiple failed and the now successful project I've made, here's some struggles and lessons I've learned. And one of the biggest problems I noticed whenever I worked on these is that I kept over planning the story. When you do research on how to best write a story or make a comic, you often hear that you should plan it all out. You should know the high points, the low points, the end, the beginning. And in a sense, that of course is correct. It is important to know what approximately will happen in the story. But for me, it kind of became a burden because I really wanted the story to be fully fleshed out before I start working on it and before I start drawing, you know? The problem is that has always led to me getting frustrated with thinking too much about the difficult parts of the story, because I was like, oh my god, okay, this has to make sense. I was like, why does this person do this? I need to have the motivation behind it already, because otherwise I'm not sure if it makes any sense at all. I focused on the difficult parts, which led to me not being able to enjoy the fun parts that came easy to me, because I was like, oh yeah, that's fun, and this thing can happen, and yeah, that will be cool, but what about this thing that I still haven't figured out? I didn't let myself work on it. I didn't let myself draw before I didn't wrote down the story properly with all their intricate details. I felt like I had to fully flesh out every character, every motive, every plot point before I could start drawing. But that just led to frustration and losing motivation, because I was like, okay, because the thing I really wanted to do, draw the story, I wouldn't do because I had to, write it all down or think it through. What I learned is that if trying to fix everything in advance stops you from making your story, it is worse than having a few things here and there that don't make 100% sense. Then there is a plot hole. What about it, At least you did the story. Especially if it is the first ever story you make. Because that came to my mind. I'm like, okay, girl, this is my first ever story that I really want to make into something. It's the first one. It doesn't have to be perfect. I realized that aiming for perfection early on was holding me back. It's okay to start with a loose outline and refine the details as you go. Then, a second big part that became a problem was overthinking the art process. I had a similar problem when it actually came to drawing the comic. In the past, before I started working on a comic idea of mine, I tried to follow professional advice that I picked up from some YouTube video that said that they, the artist, will sketch out the whole chapter or more before they start with any line work or coloring, because they also had to go their editor and they had to look over and they had to see if everything was making sense, and there would still be like things moving around and change. And it is definitely a very plausible way to work. It's very professional. It gives more of leeway in changing things and better overview of what will happen in the chapter. The thing though for me is it led to me thinking I had to sketch out most of my comic before I do any lining or coloring. In the end, I had lots of sketches, but got overwhelmed with how much more I still had to sketch. And for one of the comics I tried doing, in my mind I was like, I'm gonna sketch out the whole story before I even start lining. But let me tell you, that's not it. At least for me. And since I didn't have anything finished to look back on and be like, oh yeah, I see, it is actually going to turn out well. And that's why I lost motivation to continue to sketch it all out and to work on it in general. Another tip you hear often is to make reference sheets for your characters. And yes, I totally agree. Reference sheets are very important and will help you in the workflow immensely. Same with environmental designs and other concept art. But the thought of needing to have all of this actually held me back in making any of it, because I was like, okay, for this character I have to do this, for this character I have to do this. And let me tell you, I feel like I'm not the best at doing character design sheets, because I found them difficult to do. And I think because it was difficult for me, I didn't have as much fun doing it, and I didn't want to do it. And then I didn't do the rest of it either. And of course, in a professional setup, this is all required and good and very important to have. But I had to learn I'm not a professional yet. I am not a professional yet. So yes, in a professional setting, very important. It needs to be had. Am I a professional? No. And all those things will definitely be helpful in the long run, and I definitely will make character sheets in the future. But in my case, it stopped me from actually doing the comic. Now my workflow is a little bit different. I sketch 1-2 pages, then I move straight into line work and coloring, which gives me sort of like a feeling of accomplishment, because seeing finished pages keeps me motivated, because I see the progress, I see what the rest might look like. I'm like, oh, this page actually looks really cool, because I finished the first page and I was like, wow, it kind of looks like something. It looks cool. I want to do the rest of it. So I feel like especially in the beginning, especially if it comes to your first chapter, it is sometimes good to go straight in, sketch out 1 page and then line it and color it, just so you see what it could look like. Also, a problem that is very similar to the ones before was the difficulty of letting go of perfection in art. I would say I'm a medium good artist. I feel like I can do proportions okay. I feel like I know how they kind of work. But do I have to practice more? Yes. Do I have to practice putting proportions into a background? Definitely. This is one of my biggest problems. I don't know. I'm really bad at putting figures, people, animals into backgrounds with the right proportion. And I definitely have to work on myself there. But for this comic, for this one chapter, I was like, okay, I know it's not perfect. I know it doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look right. I know it's supposed to be different. But if I now start like practice extremely often, or like try to figure it out perfectly, I will get demotivated and I will not do it. So I was like, I am gonna ignore how bad the art is in my head. It's bad in my head. I'm not sure how other people will see it, but I'm like, it's not good. But I have to ignore that, because otherwise I will not put anything else down. I kept telling myself it doesn't have to be perfect. It is better I draw it to the best of my abilities than not doing it at all. Same with like male and female characters. I see that the female character looks better than the male character because I'm not really used to drawing male presenting people. So these are areas I have to practice in, and I will practice in, but they shouldn't stop me from actually doing the comic, right? So yeah, to sum it all up, the biggest takeaway I learned from making my first chapter is you don't have to make the perfect comic at your first try. It is better you make something with a few flaws and mishaps than to always regret not having made it at all. So if you might have similar struggles as I had, maybe this can motivate you to maybe just think to yourself which workflow works for you, even if it's not the easiest, the fastest, or the most efficient way to make a comic. Because let me tell you, the way I made this first chapter is definitely not the most efficient way to make a comic. The most important thing is that it works for you. This mindset shift made all the difference for me. I finally created something tangible instead of getting stuck with like endless planning and perfectionism. So remember, your first comic doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be yours. And find the process that works for you and stick to it. Now I'm gonna plug my comic. If you enjoy fantasy and mystery, you might like my webcomic. It's about Lucy, a young police officer, and Dove, a mysterious private investigator, unraveling a conspiracy while facing their growing connection. You can find it in the link below on Webtoon and on Tapas. Fields of Chaos, Feathers of Hope. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you read it, please let me know. So yeah. All in all, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I could help you a little bit. Let me know about your guys' struggles and what you maybe learned about yourself and how you maybe learned to overcome those in regards of actually starting and doing the projects that you want to do. I would love to hear from you because I think these kind of information is always good to, you know, talk with other people about it, and maybe somebody has a tip for you that you haven't thought of yet. Maybe you get a tip of something that you haven't thought of it yet. Yep. If you like this video, please leave a like. It helps out immensely. Also subscribe if you want to see more of my stuff. And yeah, as I said, leave a comment. And all of my links and info is in the bio. I hope to be soon back with a video. And see you until then. Bye bye.